Hello and welcome to this episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddy-Wilcox and today I'm going solo. This is the episode where we bring together the last 9 episodes and all of the things that our fantastic 3 guests have shared with us: wisdom, curiosity, purpose, leadership, all sorts of things. And you get to decide what's resonated with you most as I share some of the things that have resonated most for me. So I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you, and I'll see you on the other side. Hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm absolutely delighted to be joining you for one of my solo episodes. I cannot believe I'm actually sitting here and talking to you for episode 40 already. Boy, has the last 6 months gone like that in a flash. And here we are about to review the previous 9 episodes where we've had another 3 absolutely amazingly awesome guests on the show for your listening pleasure and to help you develop into the best leader that's right for you as an individual. So without further ado, let's dig in a bit into those 3 episodes per guest to see the things that kind of jumped out as to me as I was chatting to the 3 of them over the last 9 weeks or so. The first one was Leslie Thomas, who's the founder of the Money Confidence Academy and hosts the Let's Talk Money and More podcast. Now, you will see a bit of a theme here because all 3 of our guests that we've just had are avid podcasters as well. And it's just incredible how much fantastic experience and information that we're all getting to share through this wonderful medium of podcasting. Now, you've heard me say this before. I wanted to do it for a long time before I ever plucked up the courage to get going and do this as part of my coaching practice and my work in the leadership development space. And gosh, I am so glad I did. The incredible, rich conversations that I've been having with our guests mean that not only do I keep learning as a leader and a coach in the things that I do, but I get to pass that on. And those sort of nuggets, those golden nuggets of knowledge, those little gems that are going to help you develop into the type of leader you want to be. So thinking about Leslie then, my goodness me, we talked about so much, as we do with all of our guests so across the 3 episodes. And just thinking about Leslie, she was talking about how we juggle all those different aspects in our lives. Now, I don't pretend to have the right formula for that, but I guess it comes down to thinking about how you prioritize all that you have on your plate. Think about those spinning plates. How many can you keep up at one time? Realistically, how long can you keep those up, and keep going at the pace that you're going without something at some point, one of those plates falling on the floor? It's so important that we look after ourselves. And that linked to, David Charlton, who was a sports psychologist, and some of the discussions that we had in episodes 37 to 39 that's just come out this week. And it's just fascinating to see hear the different viewpoints of how we kind of manage and prioritize all those different things in our lives. And I think one of the things that I use sometimes when the going gets really tough is that sort of Eisenhower box idea where you've got urgent, important, in the 4 boxes, urgent in one axis, important in the other. Forget which way round it is. Urgent, important being the things that you must do now and take priority. And then, of course, you end up with those things that just aren't important. They're just not urgent. They can be delegated to elsewhere and off your plate. Now, sometimes you're not always in a position to do that, but it does help really bring clarity of mind into what you've got on your plate and what needs to be dealt with now versus the things that can wait a bit longer. So all sorts of thoughts in there, and you'll have your own ideas about what resonates for you. But then the conversation also came on to how we're inspiring and supporting others in our daily leadership. Now, this is something that came up, I think, in some shape or form across all of the 3 guests. Danny Wallace from 34 to 36 episodes as well. But not only that, the flip side of what support are we getting for ourselves as leaders? So those 2 sides, how are we inspiring, motivating others, and how are and supporting them to develop, but then how are we getting that support? Where are we finding our inspiration? And how are we getting motivated to show up as leaders in the ways that we want to be? And Danny takes it to the other extreme. She's all about showing up, wising up and rising up in everything that she does. And what an incredible character Danny is. And if you haven't already listened, I really encourage you to go back, have a listen to episodes 34 to 36, because there's so much inspiration in there, and such joy that Danny shares everything she does with those that she works with in the sort of minority circles that she supports in the work that she does. Incredible. And then another piece that came up, how do we remain non-judgmental? Now, obviously, obviously, some of you may not know this, but in a coaching capacity, the idea is that you come at your coaching and support your client from a non-judgmental and a non-directive viewpoint. So how do we help apply that to our leadership, allowing your team to get creative, allowing them to bring those ideas, bring innovation for the better of the team, that helps support that kind of idea of a high-performing team, if you like, as you encourage them to bring more of that creativity, give them that flexibility, give them that room to try, fail, learn, and try again. I've often talked about fixed and growth mindset. There's so much in this stuff, and I'm sure I could chat to you for 2 hours and not really scratch the surface, if you like. And then another theme that came up a few times throughout the different guests that we've had in this last 9 episodes was the idea of responding to something rather than just reacting in the moment. Now, we all have moments where something happens and we react. Obviously, if you're in the car and somebody drives at you, you're obviously going to react to try and get out of the way. Same goes in life. Somebody throws a curveball at you, something you weren't expecting, and sometimes we react. It takes presence of mind and self-awareness and that will to take a step back for a moment. Perhaps you've got somebody who's a repeat offender in your leadership circle, who's consistently causes that reaction in you, that maybe you can take a step back at and think about in terms of, okay, what can I do when that person does that thing, or this project gets stopped again for the 6th time, or whatever it is that's happening for you. And just think about, consider all the things that are going on, and then decide how you're going to respond to that. And that will feel so different, obviously different for each and every one of us, but I guarantee that will feel very different than actually just reacting in the moment to, oh, I can't believe that's happened again, or whatever it might be that your reaction is. That's a very sedate version, of course. I'm not perfect by any means. I know that's hard to believe, but I'm certainly not perfect, nor do I pretend to be. I do have my moments where, I fly off the handle, and parenting my 16-year-old daughter is probably a good example of that. We had a situation yesterday where she was asking to do something over and over again. And I said, in this case, persistence is not going to be resistance. The answer is still no. And you know what? About 10 minutes later, she came back to me and said, you know what, Mum? I get it. I'm sorry. Sometimes it just, you just have to handle it in the moment and see what's going on. Now, obviously, parenting somewhat different to leadership, although I would argue there are definitely some synergies going on there. And she's developing her own lovely leadership style, even at the tender age of 16. It's fantastic to see. And in fact, I did talk to her the other day about doing one of these episodes with me where we're reviewing the last 9 episodes that have taken place. So watch this space. I think in the summer, we're probably going to do a little dual episode, mum and daughter episode for fun. Why not? So I've put it out there now, so it's going to have to happen. So, we're talking about all these different things. We've talked about prioritization, and how you're managing your day to day. Where are you getting your support? All those sorts of things. How are you taking time out to think in your day? And that was something that Leslie and I were chatting through. And it really felt important to take moments for ourselves so we have time to reflect on those things that we may have reacted to when we actually wanted to respond to. Take time to reflect on that big piece of work that we've got coming up, and how do we plan to make that successful? So often we're on the massive treadmill of just, working through stuff, next, okay, roll that out on the conveyor belt, next thing on the conveyor belt. And it's all too easy just to roll from one thing to another. It takes practice and discipline to take a moment in between each one and be able to reflect. Take some of that growth mindset piece I mentioned a moment ago, to learn what happened, what might have gone wrong last time, and take that moment to think about how that will inform how you tackle the next task on the list. So all of these things, of course, are interlinked. And it's just taking that time to think about the things that are resonating with you from either what I'm saying today or going back and listening to the other episodes that we're reviewing just now from 31 to 39, and thinking about what could work for you in your leadership, in your day-to-day. It's going to be different for everyone. And understanding, and this is something Leslie and I talked about, understanding that you've got choices. You've got a choice in who you choose to show up and be, and that plays into what Danny shares beautifully in terms of show up, wise up, and rise up. Show up as who you want to be, but be wise about who that person is, because you get to choose who you're showing up as, and then rising up from that, because you'll be doing all the things that we hope bring you joy and that you've really truly thought about, because it's a conscious choice of who you choose to show up to be. And a lot of that really kind of crosses over into the work that I do with purpose with my clients. We've all got a purpose, of course we have, but have we connected with it? Not necessarily. And honestly, the day that I did connect with mine truly changed my life. And, Leslie is, purpose is calling towards the money mindset piece. Danny's purpose, helping you to show up, wise up and rise up. And David, who's helping you demystify mental toughness in everything that he does, helping people translate those thoughts and plans into action, which sometimes it's much, much harder than you think it should be in practice. So, there's so much synergy there between the three guests. And it's just been fantastic to talk about those things with each of them in turn. And if I think about that sort of mental toughness and that resilience, as I've worked with a lot of clients, and it's one of the big foundations in the programs that I provide in my coaching, in terms of that foundations of leadership, that fixed and growth mindset, and of course your resilience, that mind, body and soul, in terms of how resilient your mind is, how resilient your body is, and how resilient your soul is. And purpose is a big part of bringing joy to your soul. So those foundations in your leadership are quite critical to your success. So understanding and doing a bit of work on those is really going to help you to move forwards and understand what's right for you, and sow those seeds for your success. And in fact, as Danny called it, your team's future as well, in terms of their success. Because if you're doing that work for yourselves, you're then able to show up and support your team to do that same work too. And it really does make a huge difference to your overall success and achieving the goals and the purpose that you're all working towards. So one of the questions that I just wanted to reflect on for a moment that came up with David was, we were talking about the multiple careers that he'd had during his leadership journey. And I'm curious, how many careers have you had in your life? And I guess for me, I had to think back, but I think I've had my hotel sort of operational career. I've had my sort of executive, looking after high-powered people and managing their lives career. I've had my project management career, and now I'm enjoying the wonderful coaching career that I have. So that's 4 for me. And that's just me. So imagine how many we've had between myself, Leslie, Danny, and David. Goodness me, that's probably going up into the early 20s, I should think, between us. Sort of that will be really interesting to think about. And I should think, if you break that down for you, think about your leadership journey, you've probably had 4 to 5 in there. Obviously, if you're a younger listener and not as long in the tooth as me, you won't have had so many, and you may well be on your first leadership career. And that's exciting times too, because sometimes we find we connect with our purpose so early on, we find what we love doing, and that stays with us for our whole career, which is truly inspiring too. So either way, doesn't matter. It's what's right for you and your own leadership journey and your career along the way. And something that's been a theme throughout the 3 guests as well is confidence, and helping not only ourselves to become more confident, that self-belief, and how do we unlock that for ourselves, but also boosting confidence in others. So again, as leaders, we're often leading teams and supporting others to build their confidence. So there's so much in there that we could unpick. And the more conversations I'm having with leaders and guests on the podcast, the more that we get little snippets of different ways that people are doing that for themselves. And And one of the big ways of doing that, and of course this is growing now in this country, because it's been big in the USA for a long time, is that more people are deciding that actually I'd quite like some coaching, please. And as a coach, I really, really value being coached by others as well. Yes, I'm quite self-aware and I'm able to coach myself, but sometimes I really need that objective view from somebody else who can ask me the right questions to unlock my thinking, because sometimes I get stuck too. So, I can't stress enough how helpful coaching has been to me over the years. And if you haven't discovered it yet, how helpful it may well be to you as well. Something else that came up with David that's related, I guess, to that coaching piece, and certainly the work that David does as a sports psychologist, is helping you to unlock that untapped potential in yourself. It's absolutely fascinating listening to what David shared. So again, I really encourage you to go back and listen to episodes 37 to 39 as he really talks about this. But it's that untapped potential in yourself, which coaching and that psychological support that David provides can really help you to do. But also then how you translate that and help others to do the same, to again contribute towards that a high performing team piece, but again unlocking that purpose, connecting with it, and all working towards that same end goal to achieve what you want to achieve together. And then how that all contributes to your overall performance as a leader, but also as a team. It's incredible, that power that comes from that shared purpose and shared goals. It's absolute magic to see when a team is working towards that together and that you get to lead it. It's just an incredible feeling. And I've been lucky enough to have that certainly once in my career over the past, I won't say how many years, but quite a few years. And it was a truly magical experience. And there are, of course, things that aren't always in your control. You can't always keep a tight rein on everything, but understanding how to be flexible, how to take those knocks and bounce back. So again, another thing that David talks about, in that mental toughness piece, is that ability to bounce back, take the knocks, brush yourself off, learn from it, move forwards and try again. And that really is helpful in terms of setting your mind, or having the right mindset, whichever way you want to look at it. But I say setting your mind in terms of how you're going to approach things that aren't always in your control, don't always go the way that you want as a leader. And it just really does help to open your mind and help you be prepared for those things that come on. And one of the other things that came up several times, certainly with Leslie and David anyway, is that comparisonitis piece. And I know we've talked about that a few times before, but it's a nice, helpful reminder to all of us to not be comparing ourselves to one another. What's right for me in my career and my coaching and my leadership won't necessarily be right for you. But by sharing my experiences, by sharing the experiences of my guests, the lovely piece is that as the listeners, you get to pick the bits that resonate most with you and that you want to bring into your own leadership practice, and decide how you take that forwards. But remember, comparisonitis is the thief of all joy. I forget who said that, but it's certainly not my quote. But I do love it because it really makes sense in my head, that what success looks like for me over here isn't what success looks like over there for David or Danny or for Leslie, we're all very unique human beings. And just because I've got something happening here and Leslie's got something similar over here, there will still be lots of differences between us and how we're achieving those things and what success might look like to each of us. And being able to bring in those different leadership perspectives is really helpful. So, I talked about coaching and how helpful that is to open your mind. If coaching isn't available to you right now, who's in your network that's helping you to bring those thoughts and ideas to the fore so that you can start deciding what you want to keep, what you want to get rid of in terms of your thoughts, in other words, then informing your actions that you take and how you move forwards. Who's helping you? Goes back to what I was saying earlier. Who's helping you have that time to think? And importantly, how are you making sure you build that into your calendar? Because if your calendar is anything like mine, if you don't block that time for thinking, it will get filled up before you know it, and you'll just be going from one meeting to the next, to the next, to the next. And it just doesn't give you a moment to think about what just happened in that meeting, what do I need to take action on, and then get prepared for the next meeting. But also time to take action on the actions that have come out from all those meetings. So it's really important to support yourself in that way as best you can. And then one of the other things that really came up in terms of the last 3 episodes with David is thinking about those strengths that come out when you need them most. Strengths that you didn't know that you had until you needed them, and boy did they show up for you. So if you haven't listened to episode 39, I won't say any more, but please do go and have a listen, and you'll hear a little bit more on what was meant by that. So that's my review of the last 9 episodes. Gosh, I've just seen I've talked for much, much longer than I thought I would on all of this, but that's because, as always, Leslie, Danny and David have just been the most awesome guests, sharing the most awesome knowledge and experience with us for your benefit as the listener. So there's plenty in there for you to dig in and decide what means the most to you, and what makes sense for you, and how that will now positively influence your leadership moving forwards. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for supporting us to the 40th episode. I think we are 6.5 months in at time of recording this, and it truly is appreciated. So many of you are sharing reviews and ratings, downloading episodes, and I really do appreciate all of your support. Each and every one of you makes such a difference, and it makes what I'm sharing worthwhile. I know it's being well received, and that it's making a difference for all of you, and that's all that matters to me. So thank you, and I will see you next time on Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddy-Wilcox, and it's been my pleasure to share what's resonated most for me over the past 9 episodes with our fantastic 3 guests. What now do you want to take away and help change or influence the way you lead moving forwards? There's been so much in there that I've shared today, and so much that we could dig into deeper. So if you want to know more, please do reach out and get in touch. I'd love to have a chat. But for now, I look forward to speaking with you next week on Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. Take care.